right. Well, great. Well, thank everybody for joining us in this webinar titled TWI in Action: Scaling Expertise and Empowering Teams with Dozuki. So, for those of you that are not familiar with either the Institute or Dozuki, just a little bit of a background. The Institute, our focus is we equip frontline teams with world-class training practices, building skills that drive operational excellence. And from the Dozuki side, they enable true digital transformation on the factory floor, turning manual processes into streamlined, scalable solutions. So together we work and we share a common goal, really empowering the frontline workforce. All right, so joining me today is my business partner, Patrick Graup. Pat's the Institute VP and Senior Master Trainer. And then from Dozuki, we have Alex Tizzi, the Director of Alliances for Dozuki. All right, and today, our format, we've got a couple of three clients with us, practitioners of both TWI and Dozuki. And we're going to work through a few slides, but ultimately, we're going to have a discussion, a roundtable discussion, and ask a few questions and really get some context on what they've been able to achieve by using both TWI and Dozuki together. So I'm going to ask just each of them to give a brief introduction and a little bit of context on how they started with Dozuki and TWI before we get into the panel discussion. So with that being said, Brad, do you want to jump in?
Absolutely. So I'm Brad English. I'm the training manager here at 3M at our Cottage Grove facility. So we have about 280 plus operators that I'm responsible for training. In my prior role, right, going all the way back to 2017, I was actually an operational technology engineer responsible for bringing in training solutions. And so I really led the deployment of the Dozuki platform for about 5 years. Before handing that over to Jacob and me joining my current role. I've had multiple experiences with TWI as well. I think I've been to 3 different 10-hour sessions. And currently here at Cottage Grove, right, I've made it a priority to have one of my trainers go to the 40-hour session and really work on rolling it out here in our specific facility.
Great, thanks, Brad. And Jermaine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jermaine O'Fleury. I am the Director for Organizational Effectiveness and Talent Development at Empire. Empire is a distributor of aftermarket automotive collision parts, where we have roughly about 1,000-person workforce and about 51 locations across the country, United States, and 9 distribution centers. For us, we had Dozuki for about a year prior to connecting with TWI Institute. At that time, adoption and progress was pretty slow. I joined, and this was back in about 2022, and I joined in 2023. At that time, I was familiar with TWI method during a time when I was a performance improvement consultant in the healthcare industry. And as I joined Empire, we saw that there were a couple of key objectives that problems we had to solve. One was standardization across our network. We had various variation of work processes, and the way in which you were training had some variability as well. It needed to be scalable, and it needed to move with speed. And maybe I got the 4th S in there, which is it had to be simple. And so immediately I knew that TWI was the method for us that met that strategic need. And what I would say is that we didn't look to reinvent the wheel. We just tried to change the tires and find the right fit for us. And so I reached out to the TWI Institute, and we had pretty good partnership there. And coincidentally found out that there was a partnership with Dozuki right around the same time. And so we embarked on that journey, I believe, back in 2023, early 2024 together.
All right, great. Thanks, Jermaine. And James Yeager, you'd like
Yep,
to?
I am the technical training manager at Norman Noble. Norman Noble is a contract manufacturer of medical devices. We have a plant in Ohio, a plant in South Florida, and we also have a plant up in Windsor, Canada. Because we make medical devices or medical device components, we are subject to regulations of the FDA and an ISO standard. So yes, the FDA and ISO is in play in our situation. We were introduced to TWI about 3 years ago. We have since gone through the entire 4-module journey. I have done trainer development myself for job instruction and job relations. And then we were reintroduced to Dozuki about maybe a year and a half ago. We were looking to convert to a digital quality system, and it fit the mold very well. And we've seen massive gains based on that, switching to Dozuki. And now the correlation between TWI and Dozuki is just, it's what we needed it to happen, right? It works out great for us.
Right, great. And Jacob, thanks for being able to get on. I know you're down in Mexico, so yeah, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jacob Rattray. I've been with 3M for close to 20 years. And yeah, as Brad has probably mentioned, we joined the Dozuki journey first back in 2017 and have expanded that a lot. And then it was probably 2022, 2023 where we got introduced to TWI and have had a slower start kind of moving that along as we've been kind of doing the two together. So.
Great. All right. All right. So now we do have Q&A set up on the webinar, but we're gonna try to have some time at the end to have some questions answered. But in the meantime, you don't have to wait until the end. Just you can post your questions to the Q&A box during the webinar. Yeah, this slide, it shows the button you want to click to post the questions to us. Alex is going to be monitoring those. And if we're not able to answer all those questions, you know, we're going to get back to everybody with answers after the webinar via email. So yeah, so now we'll get things kicked off. All right, so just a little bit of history about the TWI Institute for those of you that don't know us, if you're from the Dozuki side. We're at the Institute, we're the global leaders in training and certification for training with industry, or the TWI methodology. Our roots go back to the principles established during World War II, where TWI was developed to rapidly upskill workers and improve productivity. We carried that legacy forward, focusing on the development of, you know, frontline supervisors and workers. You know, in the slide, you'll see the photo of Patrick and me with Mr. Isaiah Kato. Mr. Kato is known as the godfather of standard and standardized work. He actually worked with Taiichi Ohno in the development of what we know today as standard and standardized work. Kato was actually a TWI trainer, and he trained the institute going back a few years now in the application of standardized work, where TWI is the core foundation of standardized work. So today we've trained thousands of certified workers across the globe, delivering TWI programs in diverse industries, from manufacturing, healthcare, to construction, and even service organizations. So taking a little bit deeper, so we specialize in delivering hands-on, on the shop floor practical training programs that empower frontline supervisors and workers to excel in their roles. Our focus is on 3 core areas: job instruction, which is what primarily we're going to be talking about today in the connection to Dozuki. Talk about job methods, where we train to improve processes, and then job relations, where we build positive relationships on the shop floor. So we also certify trainers to deliver these programs within their organizations, and ensuring that the skills and the knowledge are deeply embedded and sustainable. And we call this train the trainer, where we certify trainers capable of following the set standards of TWI. And then ultimately, our work is about helping companies develop a skilled, stable workforce that can drive continuous improvement and operational excellence through the application of TWI at the front line. All right, Alex, you want to cover a little bit about Dozuki?
Yeah, so Dozuki, we are a leader in the connected workforce space, really hyper focused in on manufacturers and industrial organizations to help, unlock, measurable gains kind of in that productivity, quality, and workforce readiness, by standardizing, that operational knowledge. Our platform really helps transform, frontline performance into a competitive advantage, helping reduce errors, accelerate training, and ensure that execution is consistent across every site worldwide. And so, yeah, a lot of the things that, people are coming to Dozuki for, it starts with that standardized work. And that's going to be a consistent theme as we talk today, making sure that our standards then become training, and having a consistent feel for that across every, line, workplace, plant. But then the fun part is that we take all of that information, all of the good things that come out of our training and standard operating procedures, and we collect it so that now we can start making, educated decisions based on data, to help, identify skill gaps, improve processes, and, really help uptick that productivity.
All right. All right. So when we look at this, these two programs together, TWI and the Dozuki platform, looking at our partnership, it's built on a shared commitment to developing skilled and competent frontline workers who can drive continuous improvement. So we combine TWI's proven training methodologies with Dozuki's advanced digital platform to create a comprehensive upskilling solution. Together, we address the full spectrum of workforce development, from initial training through to full mastery, ensuring that workers are equipped to succeed. And by aligning these strengths, we provide a seamless and effective way for companies to enhance their operations and build a highly skilled and adaptable workforce. All right, so now let's get into a little bit deeper discussion about what our panelists have experienced using TWI and Dozuki together. So we'll dig a little bit deeper and see. So actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'll stop sharing so that the panelists have that the audience can see a little bit bigger view of the panelists, and we'll just go through and ask a few questions, and we'll have the folks answer. So the first thing we want to explore is how does Dozuki accelerate or build upon the successes you are seeing with TWI? And maybe we'll start with Jermaine.
Yeah, sure. I'll say quickly how Dozuki helped us is it enabled us to operationalize our delivery of training. So once we established that best way, just similar to what Alex mentioned, we had to do some work to establish that. But once we did, Dozuki helped us to centralize and standardize our JIBs. You probably hear that a little bit later, job instruction breakdown sheets that our trainers use, so that they can access their teacher's guide, if you will, at their fingertips from anywhere. And so what we also use and leverage is that Dozuki also has the ability to allowed us to build some governance around that. And so we were able to get bidirectional feedback from trainers and inputs on continuous improvement on whatever JIB or whatever our frontline may have been experiencing.
Thank you. James, you want to provide some insight?
Yeah, sure. So again, we're in a regulated industry. So for us, JI works a little bit differently. We're kind of using it as task-based prerequisite training to our quality system stuff, because our quality system stuff, a lot of it has to be controlled. There's customer approvals and a lot of stuff when it comes to the specs and stuff like that. So what Dozuki does, it allows us to have the control of those documents and to have the assessment of the JIBs once built. So we follow the standard method. The operators, the best practice operators on the floor, they build the JIBs, they test the JIBs. When they work, they send them, we draft them. But then we also still have a documented approval workflow where they're assessing that none of the quality data got into the JIB. And then we just perform the training. So it still happens rapidly, but we still have the compliant parts of it as well, right? So, and then when on the floor, they're also using it on tablets instead of having paper copies. So that mitigates any compliance risk of having those reference documents on the floor as well. So,
Excellent. Yeah, that's good to know. Great. Brad and Jacob, you want to share?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started and then Jacob
Brad.
can come in. But our directionality was very much of Dozuki first and then TWI, right? Similar to what James was saying. We're multi-conglomerate, healthcare was a big part of it back in 2017 and that regulatory part of it. So having that approval process and getting us into a documented, approved work instruction was really key for us. That was also visual and helpful to our audience. So Dozuki brought us, that next step closer to, instead of just having a whole bunch of paragraphs, right, having that visual indicators and help with that training. Where we found we still fell short was really in that relationship building that I like to say that length of that on-ramp onto the highway, right? You have that experienced operator that's already going 70 miles an hour and you have someone new going 2 miles an hour. How do you get them to where they're going to go as quickly as possible? And although we have that system, that digital system that helped us track training and courses and have that visibility that is absolutely necessary and helpful, really creating that quickness and that speed to get someone trained appropriately is really where TWI came in to help us be successful. So, Jacob, you can add.
Yeah, no, I think you said it really well, Brad. Starting off with standard work, we were moving away from I like to call a lot of big, thick 3-ring binders, right? And they were very word heavy. So things were described in multiple paragraphs where a picture with a annotated arrow and a single bullet point can take care of paragraphs of information, right? So from a speed of learning, it's much faster and easier to look at a picture, read a bullet, see an annotation of an arrow pointing to a specific location on the picture, and gain that knowledge. And then, as Brad said, TWI is now coming along, helping kind of build that structure. We transferred a lot of documentation over, but now how do we organize it? How do we put it in a good structure? And how do we continue those best practices, moving from paragraphs of information down to, again, the TWI method is we like to say, I'm going to charge you $100 per word, right? So you don't need 400 paragraphs or 400 words, I'm sorry, to describe it when you can say it in 7 words, right? And when you have a picture right there. So again, it's moving from a very paper heavy to now a digital access on iPads and then a standard way of kind of communicating. That's where Dozuki and TWI have really helped us move forward.
That's good. Great stuff. All right. Yeah, the next area I'll explore is just want to ask is, do you have any examples that show the results of bringing the TWI methodology together along with Dozuki? Any examples you can share?
Who should we?
Jermaine?
Yeah, I guess I'll kick off first.
Yeah.
But I would say I think we have a really good case study here. This our experience really was comparing greenfields to new locations that opened about a year apart. And what makes this a good comparison for effectiveness for us was that new locations don't account for some other variables that you would get with related to change management, like you would with a existing or more mature location. So it's a true pure starting point for us, apples to apples, if you will. So we opened up roughly about a year apart, 2 locations. Location A was opened in 2023. We could say, in that location, we did not use either TWI nor Dozuki. And in location B, we opened in 2024. We deployed both those tools. What we experienced very quickly was that we had an increase in team member retention. I want to share some numbers with you that might be shocking, might be hard to believe, but we saw about a 78% reduction in our turnovers, specifically 16 percentage point decrease in turnover. From a productivity perspective, our warehouse, we got time to productivity That improved by 71%, which was about 12 and a half days. From a driver perspective, time to productivity, that improved 60%, which we got them to be productive and ready to work in about 7.5 days. I can continue to go on. I'd say the last thing, which I think matters, is team member engagement and sentiment. And so we surveyed our people during the launch of our new location, and continually survey them after, and they consistently remained high and engaged. And so what I would say most notably with that is that um, the improvements were sustained throughout that first year. I think that was probably the most important takeaway from us. So I'll stop there.
Fantastic. Thanks. James.
Yeah, one of the examples I have is, with what's going on currently in the hiring world is what we've done is we've brought in some less technically capable operators to perform some of our more technically advanced operations. And what's happening is we're able to use TWI to train people and Dozuki to train people a lot quicker. So historically, somebody like that, we would have them in a different job, but now we're able to bring them into a more technical position. And prior to this, it was 90 days to get their training done, which was the technical piece plus the compliance piece. Now we're getting that technical piece done within a few weeks, so 2 to 3 weeks. And then we're able to focus more on the compliance. So we have a deeper level of understanding of the compliance piece at that end of the 90 days. So we've reduced the technical training time by, like I said, from about 90 days to about 3 weeks. So that's a massive gain for us. And we've also started doing some cross training, so bringing people from different departments, and we've reduced that training time at least 50%. So coming from department to department. So the gains are massive. So
yeah. And everything you're describing, both Jermaine and James, it's consistent with what we see historically. It's fantastic. Thank you. And Brad and Jacob.
Yeah, I can start. Maybe Brad, you can talk specifically about TWI and Cottage Grove and what you're seeing. But on a broad scale for Dozuki, what we've seen at a lot of our plants is moving from, again, the paper 3-ring binder and even paper training tracking, where I had to say, I met with Scott today and Scott showed me this and we wrote it down and how many hours did we spend. Dozuki provides, again, that all of that content then being digital and now the ability to arrange it into courses. And so with that kind of early step, that was where we started with our journey here at 3M. We saw plants, take their training that was typically, similar to what James and Jermaine said, 12 months or 1 year to train on a very sophisticated piece of equipment down to 9 months or 7 months, right? So we're taking 40% reduction in time just because now it's a digital tool that helps track that training. It's not hidden away on a piece of paper in the bottom of somebody's locker and those types of things. So we saw multiple sites and one of our larger sites that works with chemicals that is very important that we do that correctly. So that we don't have explosions, we don't have things, we don't want to be on the news for anything negatively. So that was one example there. And Brad, I think you've got a great story that we're starting to tell here in Cottage Grove. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah, and I mean, we do have those same stories. I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction here, right? And I have a trainer who's on my team as an example, and super knowledgeable, right? Expert. But when he writes those documents, right, he writes in the paragraph form, right? And so we're trying to get him through, the TWI way of thinking, $100 a word. But to be honest, it's a struggle. So what I've done is I said, hey, look, let's take a video out there. Let's have you explain it. And then let's put it through the Dozuki Creator Pro AI, right? And what I've found is that the Creator Pro actually writes in much more of a TWI format. One of our earliest examples was we actually had the one trainer that I do have, TWI train the trainer trained, did the example of the fire underwriter's knot. And we took a 1.5 minute video, and the AI wrote it exactly as the step title would be, that, important step, and then the bullets below. Obviously a little tweaking needed, but it was amazing how well Creator Pro created that TWI way of way of writing to allow us to really enable TWI even more quickly with the Dozuki
Yeah.
platform. Similarly, right, we had you know, a written down jib, right, with pencil. And what we were able to do is we were able to take that PDF, right, scan it in PDF, put it into our internal 3M AI to get it into a Word document, because Dozuki's Creator Pro couldn't quite do the handwriting, right? They couldn't quite
Yeah.
understand it, right? But our AI could. Then we put that Word document into Dozuki, and it was perfect as far as like you could do it right into that jib format on Dozuki and be able to train electronically with an iPad super quickly. So although I do have experiences like the other two of you, I thought I'd put that little twist of that connection of TWI and Dozuki, and specifically their AI capability.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I
fantastic.
think that
Thanks,
was a
Brad.
good way to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and just, you know, coincidentally for everybody, yeah, there's some wonderful AI features built within Dozuki where, as Brad described, you can take a video clip of a critical job or task with some voiceover, and you'll be amazed that you run it through their AI engine, and it turns it into a, you know, a guide or a work instruction and the training document. It's fantastic. So. All right, so the last area, you know, like quick question to explore is describe to us how Dozuki really has helped sustain or offer a sustainable way to keep the TWI processes and methodologies evolving and part of the culture within the plants. Jermaine, you
I
want
can
to
maybe
kick
jump
it
in
off there?
first.
All
Some of
right,
the
go ahead.
things that we really enjoyed, I'll go ahead and start. One of the things that Dozuki has done a really good job on, and I'm excited because we're about to get some of the new features, but they have a process or a method called commenting. And so what that allows me to do is at a particular step along the journey, if I find something that's incorrect or has been updated, a picture that's out of date, I can actually, as an operator, click there, type in a comment, and soon to be, you know, add pictures, some other things. Alex can talk about some of the new features rolling out, but I can add a comment. And what that does is it closes that loop so much more quickly. And so, for example, if it was a piece of paper, I might redline it. I might go put it on Brad's desk. Brad would get a stack of papers that he would ignore me because it's my job. He would ignore me for weeks, and then eventually it would get corrected, and then, you know, new piece of paper printed and put back in the 3-ring binder. Right? That would take weeks. That was the method when I started as an engineer. That was what I got. Papers come to me of processes that have been updated or changed. With this comment functionality, we've seen it go as fast as hours. Right, where an operator suggested a change, engineer or, you know, quality, as James would probably talk about, right? You know, when you're working in a regulated industry, you have somebody has to, you know, make sure that that change is correct or that that change is approved. It tracks all of those changes, and a new version is already there and still accessible via QR code. I didn't have to go out and change any documentation on the floor. That operator can just scan the QR code and the newest version's there. And I've seen that happen in days or hours as opposed to weeks. And so that's really helped us keep a more up-to-date documentation and keep a better training methodology as we've been going forward. Anything else you'd add, Brad? Sorry.
Yeah, and no, I just think to add, and how I see it, right, and how we're executing is that TWI and Dozuki are very different. They're different purposes, obviously within the same training umbrella, right, that really mold together really well. And what I mean by that is TWI, you know, it's really that in-person training. You're never going to get away with that. And oh, by the way, you can't do it on a computer. Right.
Yep.
And so TWI has been in this, hey, we're person to person. We're going to have this piece of paper with these 3 columns, right? But it's difficult in that type of sphere, right, to innovate as technology is into the digital realm, right? And so Dozuki has innovated into the digital realm, giving that, you know, coursework, the AI components, all that kind of stuff, right? And they are not and shouldn't be, because they're a software company, right, focused on that interpersonal types of, you know, behaviors, interactions, training types of stuff, right? So to me, TWI, in-person training, how do you sustain that? Like you said, with having the jibs in that digital format, being able to comment them, update them, and really mold it into a single super powerful, right, training system that allows us to do both the electronic understanding and the in-the-person
In person.
jibs train people as quickly as possible and effectively as possible.
Good.
Absolutely, and I'll just jump in and say, and I appreciate the question, and I agree with everything that was just said before as well. Sustainability is the challenge, and the way I see it is that implementation is the battle, but sustaining what you implemented is the war, and that really is what makes the difference. So looking at it from a little bit more of the structural side, and having the right components to ensure sustainability, I think there's 2 points that stands out to me with what we've experienced. One is leadership engagement and commitment. Their commitment to see this through is critical. It requires endurance from the top, from senior leadership all the way down to the front line. And as a result of that, what I've learned is that uh, we can't be in implementation mode forever. We need to transition to some form of governance, some form where we're handing over to operational leadership that's really driving the execution. And so, from our lens, building up and standing up a training committee where our trainers are working with operational leaders to have their timetables on top of mind, who needs to be trained by when on what, was really important there. With depending on what you're experiencing in your location, change management is often needed, and so that requires really good, strong, committed, focused leadership. It's very easy, and I'm sure many have experienced it, where organizations can have what we say organizational ADD, and so having that alignment with your leadership, it really makes the difference. And so what we're able to do with that alignment, because we do very fortunate to have that alignment with our leadership, is that when we train our leaders, we're able to position both TWI and Dozuki as the empire way of training, and so there is no other way. This is our way, and so that has gone a long way. And the last piece I would say, and then I'll stop, is um, it needs to be value added and easily accessible for the users, both frontline trainers and managers. So essentially, what I'm saying here is that they need a reason to go to Dozuki. And so, as we heard a little bit earlier, being able to centralize our SOPs and our guides and our jibs in uh, in a key location like in Dozuki with revision control, as was also mentioned, it really provided a clear point of access for us, and directed all our team members and our trainers to a single source of truth. And I think that contributed to helping to drive and build on the foundations for consistency and sustainability. And then lastly, I'll say, because you do that, on the back end, you have reporting capabilities and ways to track and see activity and engagement with the training. I think there's opportunities for us to continue to improve on logging and tracking when someone is trained on a particular jib. But when we centralize it in that location and make it part of our operations, it does make it easier for a full adoption and then to measure improvements, which I think the data helps make those cases to adjust and make strategic decisions.
So, last but not least, James.
Yep. And, just like the folks at 3M, we went from the paper-based nightmare to Dozuki. So the change overnight was massive. I mean, everybody's freaking out at first, but it turned out to be a wonderful thing. But as far as Dozuki, the structure of Dozuki is sound with the alignment to TWI. The nice thing is, I can follow the TWI standard. I keep the jib private. And then when the person is trained, I can add them to the team so that they can see the jib now. And they can use it as a reference document down the road. And it also leverages me to be able to provide evidence to an auditor that the person is trained well. I can also turn on data capture, which is one of the functionalities of Dozuki, and I can poll the trainee and determine if the trainer's training was effective. I can turn on quizzing for that jib, and I can determine if the training itself was effective, if they understood what they were trained to. And at the end of the day, there's a trainer sign-off, which is another functionality in Dozuki. So I now have documented training of the trainer that trained that person, right? So a lot of the functionalities that live in Dozuki make it sustainable and tie very well to the TWI method and the TWI standards, right? We also moved to leadership standard work. We're moving toward leadership standard work. And we started with the low-hanging group, and the lowest hanging group was the leads. And one of the tenets of a lead in our world is to be a trainer. So we use JI as the standard approach for all of our leads are trained to JI now, and they are all training per the JI method. So very sustainable across the board for how they work together very well. So
Great point.
Fantastic. I think we could talk for a few hours about these topics, really. I mean, it's once you get you guys on a roll, it's fantastic stuff. But for the sake of time, we've got to move forward a little bit here because we are running out of time. And I wanted to quickly turn it over to Patrick so that he can share a little more detail on the mechanics of both TWI and Dozuki.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, we've been talking about Dozuki guides and jibs, and we want to just kind of wrap up the great feedback we're getting from our our 4 company panelists to say, what does that look like? Just give you a quick view. And many of you are familiar with JI, the jib. We've heard about the 3-column format, important steps, which are the sequence of, things that move the job forward. Not every single thing that happens, what advances the job. Key points are the how you do the what, in other words, things that make or break the job, injure the worker, safety issues, any kind of, things that make the job easier, like a knack or a trick or some type of special timing. And then the reasons why. Why do we do it that way? So when we break it down, $100 a word, as we the 3M people like to say, into the what and the how and the why, that's the secret sauce, that creates this great, skill. So go to the next slide, Scott. So what we're going to do then is what we find, I should say, is that format of the jib, and I've been talking with Dozuki for almost 10 years now, maps almost identically, and that's what we've been hearing this afternoon. It maps almost identically to our digital format and how our digital friends, see and break down jobs. So let's take a look at that, Scott. Let's go over. I'm just going to really quickly show you what that looks like. This is a live action Dozuki guide. It's a job that I like to use in my classes, threading the pipe onto the valve. So this is kind of what a Dozuki guide looks like. So we start the guide. This you would see on your tablet. Starts, here's the job, threading the pipe on the valve. Then course, with a pen, we would swipe over and, you see, as Jacob was saying, we can annotate these pictures. We're just using a few words. So in the Dozuki guide, you'll see the important step at the top left, lay end of tape onto the threads. And then we have our key points. And you see we have our little color-coded bullet points flat along the edge. And then there's the reason. If it goes over the edge, it'll block the flow. We want to go counter. Scott, scroll over that second picture. Oh, no, go back. Yeah. Scroll over that second picture. So you see we have 2 key points and they're color-coded, blue and red, so we know which, what that is. And then we can go to the next step. Go ahead, Scott, let's click over. Now here I put in a video because there was some action going on of how we wrap the tape, over around the pipe, 3 times because that's the correct amount of tape. And so we can use either 3 pictures or a video. Let's go to the next step. And then we're going to cut the tape, and there's a picture of how we pinch and pull so that the tape doesn't break and we don't get a stretched out tape. Let's go to the next step. And then screwing on the pipe, that first key point, which is to rub gently the threads. I thought a video would really kind of show the action there so that we get the tape down into the grooves of the pipe. And then the final step is to tighten. Now here again, you see some color-coded annotations. We're going to hold that faucet at a 90-degree angle. We're going to position, go to the next picture, Scott. We're going to position the pliers with the jaws toward us because they're directional, and then do a quarter turn. Now, here's the secret. So let's back out of that, Scott. Now, that is the work instruction that operators can see. But if I'm a trainer and I want to train, and here's a function in Dozuki, we go to options and we do view the jib. So now we'll automatically turn that work instruction into the traditional 3-column format for teaching. So there you see the steps, each of the steps. We can show our key points. There are the key points for each of the steps. and they're the reasons. And we can call those up one at a time. And so that's where the panelists have been telling you we can store our jibs on Dozuki. Everything is stored there at our fingertips and with good reference to the operators. And then in this next, let's go back to the slide, Scott. So that's a live view of Dozuki. And just to kind of sum up what we're showing here, if you start, there was a question, I think, Ghislaine, you asked a question, how does this relate to our operating procedures and so on? When you start out your job or process, maybe you have a very detailed SOP, many pages, and maybe you've broken that down into what are typically called work instructions or standard worksheets. We call them jibs for Dozuki guides. And then you see the range where we can do a full, hip to hip, person to person TWI job training for many jobs that need that. But there are many, many jobs, maybe a majority of jobs where a self-guided instruction at the other end of the extreme can be used with Dozuki. But the common element here, as we just demonstrated, is that jib. And so when trainers, have the skill of creating those jibs, they also have the skill of creating excellent digital guides, and that's the glue that holds these two things together. So again, quick overview, but I want to stop talking so we have a little bit of time for questions. So go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So yeah, we did go over a little bit with our discussion, but I thought that the discussion was fantastic and very, very insightful for the audience. Alex, we've got a couple of minutes. Do you have some questions teed up?
Yeah, there's a couple in here that I think are going to be covering the same point. A lot of questions around, whether this methodology can be applied in non-English, language. So a couple, folks have been asking if there's folks down in Mexico that can help, on the TWI side, adopt that methodology.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, from a TWI standpoint, we can train in close to 20 languages. Our materials are all translated. We have the ability to train within region in the native language. And then when you couple that with Dozuki, I know Dozuki, the language functionality is fantastic as well. So people can use it in their native language, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. 100 and some different languages so that, everybody who's accessing that content can see it in their, most comfortable language. Couple other questions here. In terms of the 10-hour training class, are you guys starting to introduce how to create jibs digitally?
Yeah.
So,
Pat, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, let me pick up on that. I've actually, and Jacob helped me out a lot with this. Jacob was the forerunner of creating training in Dozuki. And so he shared with me his notes, and then I modeled that into an addition to the 10-hour class. So where we can actually, our JI trainers can actually teach how to make Dozuki guides based on those fundamentals of what and how and why. And but to answer the question, no, we start with the classic JI 10-hour class. We teach them how to break down jobs. We go out on the floor, we break down jobs, you're learning the 4-step method of how to teach them. And then once they understand the rationale and the skill, of TWI job instruction, then we teach them how to make a Dozuki guide, and then how those Dozuki guides can add all the benefits that our panelists have been talking about.
Yes, and it's safe to say that if we have the ability to train the 10-hour class and introduce how to build the jibs and the guides in that same week of training.
So your JI trainers then have the ability to not only teach JI, but also show how to make breakdowns. Jacob, you're going to say something?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways we've started doing this in one of our sites that has JI instructors is that we do, like you mentioned, that classic 10-hour training, and their graduation, right, kind of their capstone project, if you will, is they have to go out and create a jib on paper first. We recommend, because you're going to learn how to best word it and do all that. It's easy to erase with pencil, etc. And then write that into Dozuki. So their kind of graduation, if you will, or their capstone project that we kind of joke about is that, they go out and, hey, I've done through the 10 hours of class, and now before I officially graduate, I go out and I write my first Dozuki guide, and I demonstrate it in both the jib format and in the Dozuki guide format. And so we walk them through that as part of the the graduation part. So it's great. And yeah, Patrick, your how to train that piece of it has been really helpful. We've been using some of that. So
Great to hear.
The way we've been doing it is we've been just following the standard 10-hour course because we want to be focused on building the jibs correctly and following the standard and getting them to standard. Then we have author training out the backside. And I actually have a jib built for how to author a jib in Dozuki. And all the trainers laugh when I start off with the first important step is naming convention, right? So I have a jib built for how to train authors or trainers to author jibs, right? So we do it as an additional piece out the back end, but we're focused on the 10-hour class on just the TWI standards.
Other question, and then we'll do two more, and then we'll wrap up here. Because I think this one's a good one. Who in your guys's environment is actually the Dozuki expert, and is it the same person that's a TWI expert?
Great question.
Good question.
In my world, it's both.
So in other words, the TWI expert
Yep.
is also the Dozuki expert.
Yep. I've been through the trainer development, and I'm also pretty much the owner of the Dozuki system. But also, we're only 650 employees globally, so we're not massive corporations. So, from a role perspective, it fits for us.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
us, it. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd say it's the same at 3M, right? Even locally at my site, right? I'm the owner of the TWI implementation as well as the Dozuki. It all falls under training, and Jacob globally for 3M similarly.
Yeah, we have instructors, TWI instructors. It just kind of almost coincidentally it worked out where they're also Dozuki, system admins, if you will, at the same time. So there is interestingly a correlation between the two.
Funny how it works like that.
All right, and then last one here. So TWI and Dozuki, clear it's a fit for manufacturing, and frontline folks, but is there applicability for back office and support departments?
I'll jump on that one right away. So so the way our Dozuki has been implemented, it was a focus on the manufacturing, the shop floor first. But as we were adding different things, the best example I have is there was a whole process that came alongside of that as how do we set up our iPads? How do we set them up so that they're managed and controlled correctly? And so I wrote a whole series of documents in Dozuki on how to best where to purchase iPads, right? So here it has live links right within the system to go to our proper procurement. It's got things on how to get the right access so that you can be the correct author, owner, or login person. And then lastly, what are the steps to kind of walk through? So that's just one example on how to set up an iPad. Brad and I have gone through multiple different other ways in which maintenance as well as back office and ways in which they can access IT systems, ways in which they can access a lot of other. Actually, this goes extremely well hand in hand with our IT system on how to, write documentation. Where Brad and I are tired of seeing a lot of these Word documents that get pushed out or emails, and then it's like, well, where's the version control? Well, I'm using the version from 2014, and this process looks completely different because now we're on Windows 11, and so having our IT organization start to buy in is going to be valuable. We're pushing hard to try to do some of the other what I would call back office, or support staff. HR would be another one on how to access systems, how to use different software, or how to even do some basic jobs. So
Yeah, but TWI as well, right? Those job instructions are typically paragraphs in a PDF or a Word, right?
Yep.
So both the use of Dozuki and TWI, in my opinion, are very applicable, in those office type roles.
Yeah, we got a little bit of an uphill battle at 3M, but we're getting there.
I've done a lot of work with healthcare, in hospitals, and we haven't got to Dozuki yet. They're not quite there yet, but we're just starting to make some really deep inroads in terms of TWI. For example, teaching doctors how to use, the ERS, the electronic record systems. It's hugely big challenge, but TWI maps to that very nicely.
Awesome. Well, so I know we're over time here, but we will We have a bunch of questions yet. We will answer these via email, and feel free, reach out to any of us if you have questions following this. We'll also send the recording out afterwards. But Scott, I'll let you drive us home here.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah, great way to end. And I want to thank the panelists, obviously, for their deep insight and sharing their experiences. It was very, very helpful. And yeah, we look forward to connecting with the folks that were on the webinar and talking further. So with that, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.